Oh, there. This tutorial is basically going to be about some dynamic HTML pages using PHP. Now, I've done another tutorial about this, but basically because I just wanted to go over it a little bit more in depth, and maybe just do it again. So if you have seen the other tutorial and you're now watching this one, we're probably going to cover the same type of stuff, but really I've got no time constraints in this one. Okay, so we're just going to plod along, take it nice and easy, alright, and just do it all in one tutorial. And I'm going to show you, yeah, let's just crack on with it, shall we? So first things first, what we got is this very, very basic web page. Let's even call it a web page, shall we? Let's just call it a kind of thing inside Firefox with some text in it. Alright, now what we've got here inside of the PHP tutorials bit and just before this line is basically just our header. Alright, now past the line is then just our content. Alright, now very, very simply, as we click a button, it's basically just going to change the content. So first things first, let's just chuck a very, very simple set of words in here. Okay, so let's just say, and this is going to be very, very basic, guys. Alright, okay, and I'm going to explain this as we go along. Alright, and we're just going to say page equals home on here, and then home, and like I said, it's going to be very, very basic. Let's just copy this, copy this, copy this, and we'll just put one of these by the end of each one. Alright, and then the other one which we've got here is then going to be tutorials, and this one is then going to be about, and then this one is going to be contact. Alright, so let's just save this, come back to here, refresh the page, and we've got very, very simple navigation bar. Okay, and just for the sake of having a little bit of definition here as well, let's just put another line. Alright, so this is nothing to do with design here, as you can see. So what are we going to do? Well, at the moment, for dynamicness, we're going to use the URL, and we're going to use the super global of get, right, to define which page we're going to move on. We're always going to stay on the index.php file, okay, but we're going to read the URL prior to loading the content on the server side, and then we're going to output it. Alright, so it's never going to have to change pages. It's always going to the same page. So we just click on home, and we've got page equals home. Now we could just make that the landing page. Let's just change these then to tutorials. I'm going to explain all this, alright, as we go along. Oops. Tutorials, and then about, and then contact. Right, so let's just save this. I'm sorry if it's a little bit, I'm on my laptop, so I've just got my keyboard. I normally use my computer, but just this one I'm just using my laptop. Okay, so now let's just refresh this page. Okay, now at the top you see we've got page equals tutorials, page equals about, and page equals content. Alright, very, very basic, nothing to it than that. Now let's have a little bit of explanation how we're going to grab this information first of all. So I said that we're going to take it from the get superglobal. Right, well, let's explain the get superglobal first of all, shall we? And how can we read this? Well, this can be read in a very, very simple manner. If we come up to the top, just prior to any of our code loading, and actually let's not do that, let's just put it in the down here for now, so it just sits in the web page. Right, just open some PHP tags up. Let's just nudge this down slightly, and what we're going to do is up here we're just going to write so pre-formatted text, right, just so it looks a little bit better, and we're going to say first of all print r, and we're going to say request. Okay, now request holds all of the super globals with inside the URL, the post, the server. It holds basically every one of them. Okay, well, let's sorry, it doesn't hold the server. That's completely wrong. It holds the post and get super globals all inside of them together. So the request encapsulates the post and the get together. All right. So you can always then ask the request itself, is there anything inside of it? All right. So let's now refresh this. And did I save that? No. Okay. So we're just going to print our the request super global itself, and this is just an array. Okay, and as you can see here, we've just got page equals contacts. Now if we add something up here as well and say test equals 1, okay, now you see we've got test equals 1. These are all the gets because they're in the URL. Now if we was to post a form, okay, let's do this as well then, shall we? Let's just make a quick form, and action equals index.php, method equals post, close this, and then let's just make index our input type equals hidden, name equals test1, value equals value 1. Let's put an equal in there. Let's get rid of that and get rid of that. Okay, let's just copy this a few times. Okay, let's then just chuck this down here, clean this up very slightly. Okay, and then we're just going to change this to then 2. Oh no, we want 1, sorry. Let's just keep them in order at least, shall we? 2, 3, 4. And once again we'll change value to 4, 3, 2 and 1. Okay, let's just tidy this up slightly. Okay, so now we're just going to need a button so we can submit it now. Name equals submit button, so you can see this as well. Value equals button. Okay, nice and simple. Let's save this now. Press refresh, and we've now got our button here as well. So now if we click send, it sends it back, and as you can see now we've then got the test1, value 1 and submit buttons and so on. Now as you can see we don't actually have any of the information in the URL. Now let's come back over here. Now because inside the action, this is where we're sending it to. Now the form itself is using the post method, which means it's collecting all of this data here within inside the input fields of hidden, okay, and sending the name and the value to then the next page. Now that's using the post method, but we can also send some get information within inside the action itself. So let's send send equals get. All right, this is just the get word. Alright, so let's save this now. Let's come back. Let's refresh this. Well, actually, let's just come up here and do that. Okay, now we're back on the main page, and our form has basically got the action of index.php question mark, which is now is the query string. Okay, and the send variable is equal to now get within inside here. Now it's not equal to anything yet because we haven't sent it. We have 4 post variables which we're sending because the method of the form is post. All right, using the post super global. So it means that then because we're going to output the request, the post and the get information is all encapsulated, is it contained within the side of the request super global. So let's just save this and let's show you, shall we? Let's just refresh this just to make sure we've got all new data. Okay, now as you can see here, we've got all the information here. So we've got the 4 input hidden fields. We've then got the button itself as well, and then we've got the information in the URL. All right. Now if we come here now, now change this to test equals 1 and press enter, we're now only getting the get. Alright, because the button hasn't been pressed. Now if we then click the button and press submit, we're now not getting the test once again. Now let's also have a look, for the sake and purposes of this, let's go print r and we'll say, whoops, I've got caps lock on. No, let's now say what I was going to do. Okay, server, and we're going to say here with quotation marks, and I'm going to say query string, okay, or query string, right? I'm going to say query string. So we're now going to send this as well. All right, let's come back to here. Let's refresh the page first of all. Okay, now as you can see, we didn't send anything in the URL, but we'd pushed the button. All right. Now the query string has echoed out this. All right. Now let's come back to here, back to our code. Right. This is what the query string is sending out. Anything past the question mark. So let's enter something in here. Query equals string. Alright, just so you remember this, query string. This is now another variable which is going to be stored within inside of the get superglobal, which is also inside of the request, and that's equal to string. So that's saved. Let's come back over to here. Let's just refresh this page, and also now let's click the button, alright, and send it. Now you can see here that we've got the query equals string is within inside of the request superglobal. Okay, and also by outputting the server superglobal, we've outputted the query string. All right, and it's still got the ampersand and the equals and everything like that in it. All the request has done basically is taken all of the parameters which have been sent through the header, okay, and then put them and stripped them down and put them into an array. Okay, all it's done is it split the query string up by the ampersands, then split it by the equal sign, said this is the key, this is the value of here. It's done nothing more than that. Alright? Okay, so that's basically how the request, the post, the get, and the server of the query string is working. Now this is one of the questions which I received, is how can you define using the superglobals through the get and the post and so on, and how can you test which page you're on? So this is a key thing to be able to understand it. Alright, anyone can load any content, but if you can understand the server, the request, the post and the get superglobal, then it means you can do a hell of a lot more. Okay, now also what we can do is, prior to this being outputted, okay, what we can do is then come here and say post Dave, but let's set me a new value, okay, equals I am a new value. Alright, so what we're actually doing now is we haven't made a form element, but we've actually entered something into the post request, the post superglobal, alright, which is then going to be added to the request automatically, and it's going to be outputted. So let's save this, come back to our code, alright, give the page without this in it, and go back to index.php, give it a refresh. We haven't got anything at the moment, alright, and then click button. Now, as you can see here, we haven't got anything in here because it's set it in the post, alright, and it's then sent it through the request. Right. This is because basically that the post needs to then go with inside of the request. Alright, it needs to be sent through the header, and down here when it was loaded, the header had already been loaded, okay, because it was now adding the text. Alright, now what about if we then take this and cut this, alright, come up here, and before anything has been outputted to the page, we now update this and put that there. Alright, as you can see before, we didn't get anything. Right, to be honest with you, right now I'm purely just testing. Okay, this is not really anything I've ever thought about. But okay, so nothing's come out at the moment. We'll click this and we still haven't got anything. Now this could be to do with the okay. I'll have to read into that. Alright, maybe I'm going to come back with a comment on this video later. Alright, maybe it's something to do. I'm going to have a read of it. Alright. Anyway, let's not move away from the point that we're supposed to be getting here. Alright, so now we understand that the question mark defines, okay, anything after that is going to use key value pairs, all right, to define each variable that we want to use, okay, with inside of the get. Anything that's stored with inside of any form elements, with inside of the form itself using method equals post, is going to send it through the post super global, all right, and this is all going to be then collected through the request super global. Now we can just change this to post as well and come back to here, refresh. So now we're outputting the post. Let's just get rid of this once again, refresh it. We've got nothing within inside of the request at the moment. Press submit, and as you can see we get exactly the same thing because now we're outputting the post, right, and we've still got the query string here. So this means now that we've got variables which we can use which have been sent from page to page using either the post or the get method. Alright, now the one thing which you can't do is you can't mix the forms. Now what we could do is change this method to get. Alright, it doesn't matter whether it's uppercase or lowercase. Now we're sending all this data via the get method through the form. So let's come back here once again, take the question mark away. Right, now submit the form. Now everything is gone through the URL, okay, up here, which is less safe, and as you can see with inside the query string everything is now there. Now you might say everything that's sent through the post is safe, it's hidden. Guess what, that's wrong. Okay, so let's turn around and let's come and look at Firebug now, okay, using the network. Let's just run this again, okay, and as you can see here we can actually read the header itself and we can read the parameters of what got sent. So let's make this bigger, shall we? Okay, you can actually read the parameters of what got sent through the gets here, and if we come to the header itself we can actually see somewhere, should be able to see the method somewhere, not in this one, no. Okay, so it's not in there. Okay, no, it's there, look, it's in the URL, gets. So it defined it with inside the URL of what type of request has been sent. Okay, so let's just get rid of this, we don't need that anymore. Now, just to show you now, if we change this back to post, save this, and now the method is equal to post. Come back here, and let's get rid of all of this, and press submit to submit it again. Okay, we still see the same information. Come back to here, let's submit it again. Now you can see the URL is now a post request, and means that the parameters inside this are all still now with inside of the post. Okay, but that's in the get. We actually have to come here and we can see now all the values with inside of the post. So potentially speaking, it's actually not that safe because the header is getting sent, and this can get caught prior to the server seeing it through proxies. Bit out the scope of this video, to be honest with you, but it isn't actually as safe as what you think. So you have to still be very careful with the data that's being passed through the different forms to another website, right? Because you could submit some information from one form over to another website. That will get sent. Anyway, let's not move away from the task at hand. Okay, let's now remove all of this because we actually don't need this form anymore. Right, let's keep the pre there for now. Okay, anyway, so let's start trying to catch these, shall we? And let's show you how to catch them. Let's first of all say, let's take caps lock off. Let's say now if get, first of all, which is what we're going to be testing with, if get page, which is the thing that we're going to be testing for, alright, which is with inside the get, this is the key for the key value pairs, right, is equal to home, then echo out this is the home, just for this argument here, right? So that's basically what we're doing here. We're just testing if we catch the get itself, alright? Now let's come and refresh this page. We don't want to resend it. Let's get rid of this, and so on. Okay, now we're getting an error message on this because it's undefined. All right, there is ways of sorting this out through your ini settings, but if is set and get page is equal to home. Alright, this is just meaning that basically this one has to be true first of all for it to proceed past the double ampersand. Alright, so let's come to here now, and we don't get an error because we're not getting anything because the page is not set. Right, so now let's click on home, and as you can see, this is the home. Alright, nice and simple. We click on tutorials and we get page equals tutorials. We're not testing for equality with, or the test for equality, if page is equal to home, returns false, therefore the information doesn't display. Okay, now I've just made in the includes folder, okay, a home.php file. Okay, so rather than echoing out anything, let's say includes, and we'll just say includes / and then just say get page. Alright, now at the moment this isn't really very good because it could cause some errors as well, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Alright, so let's come back to here. Now it's going to include home if it can find home, right, or if page is equal to home. So now the file that we included says this is home page and also defaults with inside of the PHP file. Alright, but what about if I now change this to home 2? Nothing displays, okay? As in nothing actually on the page displays. Well, that's not very good, is it? But also, what about if we change the name of the home file, okay, and then press that? Now it's home 1. Right? We're probably going to get an error. No, we're most certainly going to get an error. You see? Warning, include file and so on, not found. Fail to open such file or directory or whatever. Okay? So basically, if someone changes the file, we're now going to pump out some errors, and we're also going to give information about where the files and the file and folder structure which we're using, which we don't particularly want to do. Okay, because people could then start testing what's inside this folder, what's inside this folder, and so on, which we just don't want to do. So what we need to actually do then is test if this file exists. So if this file exists, alright, and all we're going to do is then copy this and chuck that in there, alright, and then if it does, then we're going to include this file. Alright, this is still really kind of very basic way of doing it, alright, and there's lots of other better ways to do it, but for the time being it will do. Alright, in the beginning it will do. So now this time, it rather than include the file, if it doesn't exist, then it's not going to include it, alright, because we're testing for equality if the file actually exists. So now refresh, and basically it's saying it's not doing anything because the file doesn't exist, alright, which is good. Now what about if we then did else and then said echo the file which you were searching for does not exist? That would be fine. But you're still giving kind of an error that now to say, well, this file doesn't exist which you're searching for. So you've actually done a server-side request and told the person on the other side, well, wait a minute, this file doesn't exist. So they could keep changing the name of it until it does exist. I'd much better not go for any output. I'd just leave it there, okay? Or even have an error 404 not found, and so on, which would be fine. Or I would just preferably just include a default page instead. Okay, so what about if we just say that the home page is going to be, let's rename it back, shall we? So home. Let's say that the home page is going to be the default page. Right, so regardless whether it finds anything or not, it's going to include the default page. Now, do you really want to go through writing out include this blah 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 all the time? No, I don't want to. Alright, so what would be far better would just be to go page equals gets and then come here and say page. Alright, so we're just going to store it in there for the time being, just so we've got less to type, to be honest with you. Now also let's just make the file name, okay, and which is then going to be this. Alright, so we're kind of just being a little bit more efficient prior to doing any testing. Okay, we're extending the amount of code at the moment, and we're just going to put in here. Alright, it doesn't seem, and then let's just dump this for the time being. Now what we want to do first of all is we want to say if file exists, and we'll say file name. Right, we're going to continue on with this. Now after this, what we're going to do, if it doesn't exist, okay, we're then going to just simply includes, and then we're going to say includes, includes, actually we don't even need to do that, includes home.php. So by default we're going to include one which we know is there. Alright, so all we've got to do is come here now and say include file name. Nice and simple, because it's going to do this. It's checked if it exists. It does exist, so we're going to include it. So let's save it. Let's come to here, and I look like a right idiot if this doesn't work. And oh yeah, okay, because we're testing if the page is equal to home. So now we can get rid of this, and what we've got to do here, is basically remove this home here. So we're only testing for that. We're just testing if page is actually set. Now otherwise we're going to come down here and we're going to say else include home, because we know, well, if page isn't set then we are on the home page already. Now we've reduced down the amount of code which we've got to do any testing, alright, and if the file doesn't exist, if the URL is kind of completely wrong, then it's just going to include the home anyway, and it's going to land on the default page that we want, if the home page was the default page that we wanted. Otherwise you could design some error page, error message, whatever. Okay, so let's refresh it. Now as you can see, page is equal to about in the URL, and we've included the about page. Now the about.php in here, let's go back to here, the about.php page, as you can see, is up here, says this is the about page. Okay, and all the others say pretty much the same thing. So let's come back to Firefox and let's click on contact. This is the contact page, this is the tutorials page, this is the home page and also default. We then remove the question mark, and it says here this is the home page and also default. We come here and we can say page equals to find me whatever. It still goes to the default page without getting any errors at all, which is good stuff. Now this obviously makes it more dynamic, because you're not having to mess around with making new navigation bars, new headers, and this, that, and the other. Okay, we've just got a template of the page. Right, now there's nothing stopping you from making a left hand column and doing the same thing with the left hand column. Alright, now there's also nothing stopping you from, let's say, just making a function about this. So let's, for the sake of arguments, let's make another folder and say functions. Alright, now with inside of here, let's make a new PHP file and simply just call it functions. Right, inside of this, let's make a function and call this get page. Alright, now first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to say directory. Right, we're going to tell it where the actual directory is itself, and then we're going to say page, or say file name. Okay, So that's our function. So we're entering in directory, and then we are having also the file name entered as well. So first thing that we've got to do is, I believe, is we're going to check for whether the directory exists just for the sake of it. Alright, so let's now say root equals to server, okay, and then inside of here we'll say document root, alright, which is going to always then know where the base directory is of the server. If we're in the wrong place and so on, then we're always going to know, well, wait a minute, the document.root is always, or document_root is here. Right, now let's make the path. Alright, now what we're going to say then is that the server document_root is then going to be root, then add on directory. Okay, so the path. Now, next thing that we need to do is say is directory. Okay, and we're just going to say path. So we're actually going to now test if the directory which we're testing for is, believe it or not, a directory. So let's just say echo this is a directory. Alright, so first things first, now we've got, what we need to do is, because we've got the functions page, we actually need to have this within inside of our code first of all. Now I like requiring anything at the top so it's nice and tidy. You know that throughout the whole page you've got this. So let's just say require once, because I'm a big fan of just making sure we include this file once. Functions.php. Okay, so let's come over here and save that. Save, come back to here, refresh. We've got no errors, good stuff. There's no reason to get an error. Okay, so let's now test this function. Alright, okay, let's get page, and directory is going to be or the root. It should work actually. Directory is going to be includes, and file name is going to be home.php first of all. So let's come back to here. Okay, as you can see, this is a directory. Alright, so it actually tested if the includes is a directory. Fantastic. Right, let's also now come to here and let's actually output then the path and see where that was. Alright, let's refresh. As you can see here, we've got C, got my WAMP, www.tutorials, PHP, dynamic, and then includes. So my root was this here. Okay, that was the server document_root, and then we just told it the includes file there itself. Okay, which then said yes, this is now a directory. Good stuff. Now all we need to do is within inside of this, we need to test, well, does the file exist? Alright, so let's now test this. Does file exist? Now we know that we didn't enter in here the /. Alright, so at one point we're going to have to make sure we either enter it here or later. So let's actually say that we're going to enter it here. Alright, now we're going to say file name. So if the file exists, echo this is, actually we'll put that here because we just want some information first, and then this is a file. Alright, and then we'll just put that there instead, and let's chuck a break tag on the end of that. Right, so if the file exists, it's going to output then this is a file as well. So let's come here, and as you can see, this is the directory, this is a file, home.php. Right, so now we've got confirmation that it's a file, and also that it's a directory, and the file is located within inside of that directory. Okay, all well and good. So if this is correct, then what we want to do is potentially include this file. Okay, so just include and path dot file name. Okay, obviously with then the / in it. Okay, so we know it's there. Now if it's not, and with inside here I want to return true, okay, because I want the function to actually do something and return true if it has done something. Alright, now if it doesn't, then we're going to say return false. Alright, so it's going to get to here and it's going to return false. We're going to remove this is a directory because we don't need it. So anything now we send in, it's basically going to check if the directory exists, if the file exists. If it does, it's going to include that file, and it's also going to return true. If it doesn't, it's going to drop down to the bottom and it's going to return false. So this means now we can come to our index.php, okay, and simply test for one thing. We can still remove if this is set and simply say if gets page, come here once again and say includes, and then we can say gets page. Alright, now what did we just type in there? Yeah, it's okay, fine, it's fine. Okay, and what we're going to make the assumption here is that it's .php as well. Right, so we're just going to test if there's a PHP file there. Now, what we could also do is rather than say, look, this is a PHP file, because it might be maybe an HTML file, or it could be a PHP file. So rather than say if the file exists with the file name, well, actually that needs to be here .php as well. Right, so we're checking if this file exists, which is the PHP file, which is fine. We can include this, right, and return true. Well, why don't we? Yeah, we leave that. Why don't we just then copy this, okay, and we'll do another test, all right, and we're just going to check for HTML, okay, rather than just checking for PHP. We'll check for HTML as well. So if it doesn't exist, it's going to come past this return true, and it's going to move on to the next one, check if it's the HTML file, return true, otherwise it's going to return false. Right, so we now know that if we have an HTML file there, it's going to include that. If it's the PHP file, it's going to include that. Now, which one's going to take precedence? That's the whole point. Do we want the HTML file to take precedence over the PHP, or do we want the PHP to take precedence over the HTML? Okay, in this scenario, we're going to allow PHP to be the primary file extension all the time over HTML, because if this file does exist, then this function is going to stop already at the return true, and it's never going to get to this. Alright, so the HTML one's going to be ignored. Okay, so let's save that. We've just got one function. Okay, so now if getPage includes, and this get page here, if that returns true, then we basically know, right, it's done this already, it's included it already, so we actually don't need to include anything. Alright, so rather than that, we can just come here now instead, copy this in as well, so if it doesn't exist, then we can put it in here once again. Now surely that doesn't make sense, because now we're doing two tests all the time with inside of the same function, right? Well, what about if we come to our function and we now make another parameter, another argument, all right, and we'll say, call this the default, but we'll say false, so you don't have to supply it instead. All right, so if this file does exist, right, it's going to include this. If this file does exist with the HTML, then it's going to do this. Okay, now we're just going to copy this once again, alright, because we know the directory is there, and now we're going to see whether the default's there and if the default is set. So if default, first of all, so it means that it's not false, we're going to come here and we're going to say, okay, well this time, rather than checking that, let's check for the default page, alright, instead. Now, the default page could be PHP, or it could be anything else. What's that going to? Well, I made that one there, that one there. Okay, that one goes to that one there. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so now we're testing for. Oh, actually, that went there, like that. Okay, that's better. Right, so now we're testing for this instead, alright, with the HTML one. Now, once again, let's turn around and say that HTML is going to be first, or PHP is going to be first, and we'll just change this then to PHP. Okay, so we're doing two tests, one for PHP and one for HTML. So now, rather than having to basically test here, all we're doing is we're testing if it's set, and if it isn't set, then we're going to include the default one. So let's come here and then we'll just say home is the default one. So potentially speaking, we don't actually even need this anymore. Alright, whoops. We potentially don't even, let's remove this one because it's easier. We don't need this anymore, and we don't need this, okay? Because this one's going to do all the work for us, and we're just going to come here and put home instead. So if is set get page, then just, I mean, if is set this one get the super global page, the page key, okay, then use call our function get page, search in the includes folder, use the get super global, and if not, then use the home file itself. So otherwise, then includes home.php. So let's use this once again, alright, and we come here, let's put that in there, let's remove this, so let's just do it logically, just to make sure the file's there, alright, and yeah, that's it. So if this one doesn't exist, well, you're buggered basically. So let's have another test of this now, see whether this little bad boy works. Okay, so now tutorials, about, contacts, let's change it, okay, to 11111. This is the home page and also default. Now see how much we've reduced down the code now to like 4 lines of PHP, but now we've got a function here which does everything for us. Okay, so all we're testing for is equality, that the actual files and folders itself exist, which is great. Alright, you could extend this one function even further to do a lot more, but that's the ethics behind of it. If you then start testing for the files and the folders, now you could start putting this information within inside of a database. Alright, so you could make the file and enter all of the HTML within inside of a database table and row, etc. So rather than using the names here, you could just say like kind of, well, I like that page ID equals 56, and then that would be like the row number 56 in the table, and then it would give you the page title, the page link name, whatever, the content, any other information, usage rights, privileges, the lot. That's basically content management. So it would all run upon the one page itself, okay? Which would be more logical. Alright, if you wanted to have a content management system, then you would store all of the data, the textual information within inside of that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Alright, I've explained the request, the post, and the get super global. You've also seen the server super global to basically find the query string. You've then found out about how the post and the get information is sent. Alright, and also a quick introduction highlight of how Firebug then finds all this information through the network. And you've also found out that my Firefox needs to be updated. If you ever are wondering why am I using an old version of Firefox, you know what? I think it's more stable than the new ones. So when I'm just doing this basic stuff on my laptop, this Firefox is the old one, 3.6. It's nice and stable, and it runs just perfectly well, just to do simple things. Okay, that's why I use it. Anyway, that's it from me. All right, I hope you've learned something within this. I hope the quality's been alright. I apologise if it's not. I'm on my laptop, okay? It's not in the environment that I really like doing tutorials. I like doing it on my computer, but I'm just sat here in my living room doing it nice and simple, relaxing, chilling out. Just a quick video for you. Well, quick, that's probably, I think, like 40 minutes or something. Anyway, guys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, fellow subscribers, come and visit me at Facebook, facebook.com/Thorn Design. Otherwise, come and visit me at YouTube if you're there already. By the likelihood you are, because you're watching this video. youtube.com/Thorn Web Design. If you've seen my video on someone else's website, fantastic. Just let me know. All right, let me know where you've seen it. Chuck a comment on through Facebook and so on. Right, I'm more than happy for other people to post my videos somewhere else, as long as my name obviously is on there, and so on. Okay. If you've got any more feedback about other tutorials which I could do, let me know. All right. That's it. Right. That's me gone. Thanks very much. Goodbye. Good night.